Cooper Anderson, this Friday, our podcast, You're Screwed.
This is Producing Music Podcast with Mark Dollar and Cooper Anderson.
Hey guys, how you doing today? Producing Music Podcast, Mark Dollar, myself, Cooper Anderson, the host with the most. How you doing today, Cooper?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's a nice Friday morning. Of course, we've got New Music Friday, but we're going to get to that a little later.
I like the background, like the lights in your in the back. It's kind of nice. You got a little bit of the sunlight, but then there's like some other colors going on. I like it.
Yeah, thank you. That's the Miami Heat is the setting I have it on now. So I'm actually working on that for my Twitch feed because apparently there's like a bot on Twitch that you can like have people in your chat change the lights. So that's my next goal. That and the gambling. I'm gonna add gambling, of course, because why wouldn't you add gambling, right?
Yeah, gambling sounds like it's fun, and it's like a lot of cool incentives that our listeners can get when they gamble their points. And we look forward to the future of this podcast where we'll be doing different giveaways and stuff like that for all of our listeners.
Yeah, and in the short term, we're gonna have like our digital products as a giveaway. For instance, our sample pack. We have a guitar sample pack coming soon. I have my drum sample packs now. We have Mark's guitar presets for Logic, and I believe there's another one as well. Was there another? Yeah, we had one for Logic, then we did one for, was it Amplitude?
Yeah, I think we did an Amplitude preset pack. I forget whatever else, but I'm also going to expand that and do it with some of the more modern amplifiers and stuff coming soon as well. Just because I have been using some newer things other than Amplitude. I love Amplitude, but sometimes it gets a little unrealistic for me when I'm using high gain stuff. So it's all good for the clean and like some overdriven stuff. So that's what the pack really kind of focuses on, and some of those great cleans, the best of the best of the cleans, and the best of some overdriven and some mildly distorted tones.
Jeremy's on the chat right now. He says,
Jeremy!
He says, send money!
Sendmoney.com.
But yeah, the Amplitude, like you said, it's good for the cleans, and they're often like really bassy for some reason. A lot of low end. I always have to turn the bass down. But I love their Fender amps are really good.
Yeah.
And
I feel like
they were the original Ampeg bass amp. Now a bunch of people have Ampeg bass amps. So theirs is a little dated at this point, but their Ampeg is really good.
I do like all the mic and cab simulations. I feel like they were the most to get very expansive with that stuff. With the room simulations and all of that stuff.
Yeah, the mic placement.
That stuff they got down really well, and I wish I had that same functionality in other programs, and where it just obviously sounds better.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you want to move forward? You want to talk about some New Music Friday?
No, let's just go down the list. So first on the list, we have our questions today.
Ooh, let's go for it.
Yeah, so question number 1. Pamela from Minnesota asks, how do you deal with edgy clients? clients who are hitting you up about the mix every day while you have only had the mix for a day. Ones that don't know how to articulate themselves the best way that works for you.
Hmm,
Why don't you go
that's
ahead and take
interesting.
that?
Well, I'm interested in what she means by edgy clients. I'm thinking that she probably means like clients that get kind of hostile or like um if you are talking about clients that are hitting you up every single day. I've been annoyed by that. Um the best thing to do for me is just to let the client know, hey, definitely if like for instance if you're working on a mix or album, um don't necessarily give yourself so many hard fast deadlines. Don't over promise yourself to only under deliver a date. It's not necessarily more on you, it's just the the mindset that you're giving the client that you're just going to be working on their mix. Some clients actually think that you're supposed to be working on their mix whenever they send you money for all hours. But the real truth is that's not going to happen. And they don't want that to happen. So always reassure them that you know, the mix is getting done as fast as possible. If you got a client that's beating you down for a mix after a day, um, I don't know what to say to that. I would say, let that client know, hey, I'm getting the mix done. It's gonna take some time. Please just be patient. You know.
Yeah, I'm always upfront with clients, like, I'm minimum 3 or 4 days to do a mix, just because I like to come back with fresh ears and do more tweaks. And I listen to it in the car, I listen to it on the phone and stuff. And I actually like turn down things that have a tight deadline because
Yeah,
yeah, I had one recently who was like that, exactly like that. They were just like hounding me after I told them that. Then it's like the next business day, he's like, is the mix done yet? I'm like, bro, I haven't even started yet.
yeah. I mean, with that being said, I feel like you know there is again etiquette for that, and we talked about etiquette last week, but in this particular way, some artists just don't have that understanding. They think of it, well, yeah, I think of it like this. Some artists when that come to me, like they haven't spent more money on anything musically in their lives up to the point where they've met me. So a lot of them have this idea that, wow, I'm giving this dude like, I don't know, however much money it would cost for me to mix a record. And they're like, oh, well, I got to get him to do all the work. He has to work all hours in the night. But the truth is that doesn't happen. And again, we don't want that to happen because, as engineers, it's our subjectivity that allows us to come back to a mix and give the mix or production more ideas. So just always be steadfast and letting them know, hey, don't grill me about it. Say it as nicely as possible. Don't be a dick about it, but just let them know as nicely as possible. And in terms of the second question, as it seems here, it says
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
that
Well,
don't.
wait. I have one more thing about the other one.
Well, that's what I'm actually saying. It's a two-part question in here, I think. It says
Oh,
ones
gotcha.
that don't know how to articulate themselves the best way that works for you. So I'm guessing that means you might have a client that um, doesn't know how to communicate their ideas. Okay, well, there's a few ways to solve it. Um, there's actually some producers that I know that have a limbo sheet that goes out with every I don't know, mix or production or something like that. It's just a sheet in where these are kind of the words that I use to describe certain things or this, that, and the other. So when you're working with a client, maybe they could get a perspective of how they could talk to you. You got to realize that you're the one kind of sitting in the hierarchy chair, that big tall chair. And for most people won't know what's happening in some of those moments. Even for me, if I'm getting someone to hire, like me hiring someone to mix for me, there are going to be things in that mix that, were so detailed or something like that, that I probably wouldn't have ever paid attention to it. And that is because of that mix engineer. Um, and maybe it'll take them a little bit to explain it to me, whatever the case is. But the fact of the matter is, there does become a line in where you can't sit here and allow clients to sit here and just speak metaphors to you. I have one client that said something to me like one day, I want my kick drum to sound like a tiger. It's
What?
like, what? Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know what that means. Is there a brand of drums named Tiger Drums or something? Like, I don't know. You know, so I think there is a little responsibility that the artist has to take in order to make sure that they can communicate that as best as possible. You do open up the forum for them as much as possible to try to get them to explain what they're hearing or what they're feeling. But they also have to learn how to grow into that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, people have, there's definitely a learning curve for like working with a mix engineer or a producer or whatever. You have to learn how to be produced, and you have to learn how to, use the commonly accepted terms. I mean, there's actually glossaries out there with like terms you're supposed to use. But yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, hearing and stuff is so subjective. It's really, you kind of get mixed messages all the time. But I was gonna say, no, I forgot. Never mind. Let's move to the next
Oh,
question.
good.
That's basically
Cool.
it. Yeah, learn
right.
what you're talking about, and I'm big on references too. That's the important thing. If someone's asking for a Tiger kick drum, just let me know what other record has a Tiger kick drum. I'm gonna go listen to that record. I'm gonna see if it's even remotely in the ballpark of what we're working on, and if it is, then I'm gonna make it sound like that, and then keep it going.
Yeah. Good method of strategy there. All right. Tom from Patterson, New Jersey asks, what are some ways that I can create more space, meaning balance and EQ in a mix? I love my mixes, but they seem to feel a little bloated as compared to other mixes I compare to.
Short answer is turn stuff down.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm always working on getting space together. But yeah, it's really about balancing. If you're starting with a really loud mix, I know some people like to kind of mix in this way, but if you're starting with a really, really loud mix, you're not going to be able to hear how you can like maybe balance the mix a different way because everything's just kind of coming at you. So I like to kind of when I start a mix, I like to start with the drums. I only well, not true. I would solo the drums, go in between soloing the drums and hearing every other instrument very quietly. So I'll build my drums just because the drums are the most impactful thing in the mix, and then I'll start bringing things around that and seeing how those things work and making sure they fit into the relative space that they seem to have been given based on where I land on the drums. But I don't know. You got to use reverb. Well, sometimes delay to get additional space in the mix. Sometimes when you don't have enough reverb or like a short delay on an instrument, it could just feel sterile. So I always try to push an instrument into the mix, push a vocal into the mix, things like that. What about you, Cooper?
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about with everything cranked up, turned loud, there's kind of two parts to that. The first part is like we were talking about before, is giving yourself some time with the mix to step away and come back with fresh ears. That helps so much. I cannot like say enough about that. But when you come back with
Hmm.
fresh ears, you might have been working on the guitars and the guitars sound great, but they're way too loud. So you bring them down a few dB and then everything's sitting right. But you wouldn't have known that because you're working on them and you're focused on them. So that's why they kind of crept up in the mix. And then the other part is the headroom. You got to give yourself a lot of headroom. And the easiest way to do that, especially early on in the mix, is you want to turn up your speakers or headphones or whatever you're mixing on. You want to turn them up pretty loud. And then when you're bringing up faders, you don't bring them up as far. So your levels are actually really low, but you're compensating for that with your headphone volume or speaker volume. So it's loud in the room. And then that'll give you the overall like rock and volume that you need without killing your headroom.
Yeah, that's a good strategy too. I mean, there's always the biggest argument with gain staging and management of that throughout the mix. I mean, I just think about also great arrangements. If you have arranged and produced your song the right way, then you've already taken care of a lot of those bloated things. If you have like four basses in a song, of course your mix is going to feel bloated. I mean, maybe they're not all running at the same time. However, and maybe they're not all in the same frequency spectrum, but if they're all in the same frequency spectrum, kind of colliding with one another in terms of what they're doing in the mix, of course your mix is going to feel a little bloated. If your guitars are not maybe high pass just enough, then of course your mix is going to feel a little bloated. If your cymbals are too like loud or blary or kind of sound too
Washy.
boxy, then yeah, washy, then yeah, of course your mix is going to feel a little bloated. If you have like a kick, a point kick with an 808 and then having like another like low end instrument in there, of course your mix is gonna feel a little bloated. So yeah, it's all about making sure you have great arrangements to start or being very arrangement minded in your productions. Arrangement can go by EQ as well. And that's what a lot of engineers may not seem to realize in that.
Yeah, that's more of the engineering part of arrangement, the arrangement by EQ. But yeah, it's less is certainly more for sure, on all of those levels. You got to pick your sounds properly, and then don't. That's the other thing too. Is like once you hear something 100 times, which is easy when you're producing or mixing it, you're gonna get bored of it. It just happens. So you have to like not compensate, like overcompensate for that. You know what I mean? Because less is more. If you're throwing in like 50 layers of like the same chords on a synth or something like that, it's not going to really help. It's going to actually make it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I, I, I always tell my clients, it's better to give me your bare elements that just sound the best rather than giving me a ton of different things. Sometimes when I get like these big productions, I look at all these tracks and it's like I wind up getting rid of like um maybe two or three tracks that have nothing to do with nothing. So, you know, less is more, as you have said before. And I don't necessarily know if this is a question from anybody, but it's just tips on linking with the right client. Hmm.
Tips on linking with the right client. I would just say it's a lot of trial and error. I mean, first you got to figure out what the right client is for you. Like, what types of clients do you like to work with is probably the first part. And
Yeah.
then, figure out where those people hang out. Um, find out what you can offer them. And then that's how you kind of work your way up in their world. It's providing value. So that's what, if you do that up front, that's what will attract people to you. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the trickiest things because we're basically entrepreneurs, we're running our own businesses. So it's not like we just get whatever comes in. If I'm like working for, I'm really a big skier. So if I work for a ski resort, their clients are going to be all skiers. So I'm automatically going to have that connection with them. But in music, there's so many different genres of music. I guess that's probably the easiest way to break it down is figure out what genre of music you like to work on in whatever
Yeah.
capacity you're trying to work on. And then that commonality with those artists will be a good start to your relationship.
Yeah, it's definitely figuring that out first. I've had big battles with that. I love working on R&B and pop and even EDM and like reggaeton sometimes. But I found that in the big arenas, um, I love doing that type of stuff. But in the smaller arenas, I love working with some of the smaller bands, like mid-tier bands and things of that nature. Just because there's, believe it or not, there's that same amount of consistency. It's like you could feel that energy coming from a mid-tier band that's like really excited about their music. And then, when you're starting to convert over to the high profile side, you get even more of that energy. And that is what works for me. I like working with clients that are just as inspired about the process as I am. It kind of sucks when you got to work on a record and you are like your literal source of inspiration. So those are things to kind of think about when you are working on a record for sure. Also, I like to, talk to people about making sure that you understand the amount of time that you want to put towards the record. You don't have to have a record on the table to figure out, okay, how do I schedule my life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's best to put into practice how you go about working on records, even while there's no records on the table, so that when you start to get um clients and stuff, you automatically know, or that automatically fits into your schedule. There's no extraneous work that you might even feel, because once you get into that element and where it's that systematic, you can put the same amount of hours in, the same amount of inspiration in every single day. And I think that's what prevents you from being burnt out.
Yeah, you don't want to, excuse me, you don't want to get rusty with this stuff, and you don't want clients to be paying you a lot of money to like, install plugins and like fiddle with your template. You want to have that stuff ready to go, and that's what will keep them coming back. So it's like, when you don't have a client or you're in between projects or whatever, that's the best time to, kind of keep it fresh and get your stuff fine-tuned so you can be more efficient when the next person comes along.
Hell yeah. All right, Cooper. So we're gonna step in to Mew. Well, I said Mew. I'm gonna re-say that. New music news. So you've been wanting to talk about the new Logic update.
Yes, it's so amazing. It's been a long time in the making. The last major update for Logic was in 2006, and that wasn't even uh, well, I guess that's not quite accurate. The last update for the sampler in Logic was 2006. Logic, the last major update was like 2012 for Logic Pro X came out. Yeah, so Logic Pro X was the last major update. But Logic is like it came out in the 80s, and it's just been this thing where they kind of keep updating it over the years, and it's kind of become kind of convoluted over time. And then when Apple took over in like 2003 or so, they also came out with GarageBand, and then those two were kind of like separate entities, and they finally a few years ago like basically combined them. So GarageBand is like the entry level, and then Logic Pro is like the Pro expanded version, and they look very similar and operate very similar. And now in this version of Logic, they finally introduced some of the GarageBand iOS features, which is they had that sampler in there, and they also had the Remix FX, which is like, it's basically like a DJ FX, and you can control it with your iPad or your mouse, or your iPhone or whatever. And it's very cool for like stutters and stuff, and all that kind of thing. So that was all very cool. And then the sampler update, so they have two samplers. The regular sampler is the EXS24, and it's backward compatible, so all your old EXS24 samples will still work on there. And then there's a quick sampler, which is very similar to Ableton's Simpler, and that's easy for just like dragging and dropping a sample in there and playing it on the keyboard. It's very easy to use. The other update is a step sequencer, which is kind of like Fruity Loops. And then they also have live loops, which was another GarageBand functionality. It's very similar to Ableton's session view, where it's like you can kind of take different loops and arrange them differently. And I love that sort of thinking. I still don't think it's as well executed as Ableton. It's still a little clunky, but at least they're trying. And this is version 1 on Logic Pro of that, basically. So I'm sure it'll get better after a few
I'm sure there'll be
updates.
more updates. Yeah, for sure.
But overall, I'm
that's
very
interesting.
impressed. I'm going to be probably using Logic the next few weeks to really dig in and get to know the inside. So that's the other thing. So our sample packs, now I'm going to be a lot more excited about putting them out on Logic, because before I was going to do them on the Logic EXS24, and it's just like, it's difficult to program those things. It just took forever. But last night I was playing with the new sampler and just dropping stuff in, and it's a breeze. It's very similar to Native Instruments Contact. So it's way more powerful and easy to use.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to check it out. I was a big Logic user back in the eMagic days.
Yeah.
I think Logic 9 was pretty much one of the last versions of that. And I actually still have Logic 9 on this computer. But I have used Logic Pro X, and there's a lot of clients that I work with that uses Logic all the time. And so to keep up with the functionalities will be great. So I can't wait to do a session with you, Cooper, so we can go over some of those functionalities and see how they work for us.
Yeah, we'll be doing some beat making production sessions on here very soon.
Hell yeah. We'll be, doing all types of stuff, all types of guitar samples, drum samples, all of that stuff. I can't wait. I can't wait. Wait.
All right, let's keep
right.
it moving. So we got the next thing on the list is this was you had a couple headlines to read.
Okay, just a few music headlines today. Frozen musical closing permanently on Broadway.
That is a shame.
Frozen.
My daughters are going to be upset.
I know. I mean, what's interesting about the Frozen, musical stuff is that it has dominated some parts of the music industry over the last decade. And there was a time in the early 2000s, the Frozen stuff was like number 1 on the charts. So,
well, you're talking about like
something
2013 was when it originally came out.
yeah, I think so. But the actual musical, which first opened in March 2018 at the St. James Theater, was far from a flop. In a week before Broadway's curtains came down in March, the show grossed over $798,000. I don't necessarily know where the future of the music industry is going, but it's looking like one of those signs. I mean, will Broadway still be there at the end? I mean, Broadway, I'm gonna be honest. I was a musician on Broadway for a few years. I did The Lion King, and those gigs paid well. So I'm thinking about all of the musicians that, um, you know, have had those jobs and now lost those jobs. So this is kind of looking like a very bleak time in terms of how music is moving forward through this crisis.
Yeah, for real.
Ah. Well, there's another music headline. We have Live Nation set to raise another $1.2 billion to boost liquidity during COVID concert shutdown. Um, that's another sign of, this crisis that we're going through. There's going to be even bigger bailouts. You know, I'm almost, thinking that the auto industry needed to bail out. I feel like, we need to bail our musicians out even more. What do you think, Coop?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky just because everybody's getting bailouts, and the overall economy is just slowed. So I mean the demand for so many industries is just like dried up, and you want these
Yeah.
things to come back, but like there's just going to be a lot of changes. I don't have the answer really. I was just browsing that article because Live Nation and AEG are like the two biggest concert promoters, and we were talking about that last week too with the Saudi investment. So Saudis, they bought 500 million of Live Nation stock, but that doesn't mean, that was already issued stock. So that is just like an investment for the Saudis. Basically, that doesn't mean Live Nation's getting any more money. Whoever was the shareholders that sold is the people who get the money from that. So what this is they're issuing more debts. So it's like a bond basically. So publicly traded companies, that's what it is they'll issue stock and then they'll get that money. So I don't know this is a secured note, so they're looking for institutional investment, and it'll be interesting to see who invests in them. But with the other thing with Live Nation is it's weird because I'm reading like on one hand they're like, oh, we have much lower expenses. We'll be fine through, the end of the year, next year, whenever concerts start back. But then they turn around and now they're looking for 1.2 billion. Like, what? Which is it? Are you
Yeah.
good or are you not good? Like,
Yeah. Live Nation, hit us back. Let us know if you're good or if you're drunk and needing a cab home.
and we are not giving you 1.2 billion.
No, we're not. Absolutely not.
Keeping that for ourselves.
But I know who can give them $1.2 billion.
Who's that?
Katy Perry and our new Music Friday debuting all of that. But
Yeah, because Katy Perry's lawsuit was overturned, the copyright infringement for Dark Horse.
Yeah.
But that wasn't billions. That was like 2 or 4 million. And Katy Perry was liable for less than a million, probably like 400,000 or 500,000. But anyway, yeah, New Music Friday. We both loved the new Katy Perry record.
Yeah, just a great feeling record. Katy, I've worked with Katy before. She's a good friend of mine. Shout out to Katy. But at the same time, it's just a great record. 100%. Like, she just outdoes herself every single time. I know with Katy Perry records, she goes for a certain feel, certain sound, and she's always achieving it. So thumbs up on that one, Katy. Great record. Um, Moving on to Bad Bunny. You know what I feel about the whole reggaeton movement? It's just that it's chasing this one song, and that was Tibote, which came out, I think, in 2016 or something like that. Like, literally, it's the same bass, the same kick drum, and we have the same vocal elements. It's like I'm just kind of getting tired of the whole reggaeton
I
sound.
think that's
It's
more of
fun.
their like Caribbean, uh, the Caribbean roots, because reggaeton has a lot of like Puerto Rico, that's in the Caribbean, but the other islands in the Caribbean and the big music genre is reggae, and reggae has this thing called rhythms, which is basically like one song and like all the big reggae artists will jump on it. So like and then they kind of like challenge themselves, like, say Beanie Man jumps on the rhythm, then Bounty Killers also definitely got to jump on that. So they
Yeah.
kind of get passed around, and usually it's the same beat. You can have a different instrumental, but I feel like that's kind of what reggaeton is doing in a certain sense too. I mean, it's just there's very distinct elements like that beat alone, the doom 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 doom. That beat is it's basically the other part of it is it's also pretty much the same beat as dance hall reggae with one extra snare.
Yeah.
It's like doom 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 doom, and the other one's
Yeah.
doom 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 doom. It's one extra snare, and it's the same kick and everything.
Yeah, it's interesting, I mean, maybe that's just a secular idea of how music works in our island countries that surround us. Um, I don't know. It just for me it just didn't really speak that much.
One thing I do
But
know is from my based on my research from Spotify last year is reggaeton records are the best performing percentage wise, hands down, like over and over again. I would look at New Music Friday and track the performance over 6 weeks. And, the reggaeton artists, even if it wasn't like the Bad Bunny level, even, entry level stuff, it would just get massive gains in people listening to it. So there's definitely, it's a very popular genre.
well, I also think it's popular only because that in that culture, I mean, their grandma, like, think about it. Like, I wouldn't be able to get my grandmother to listen to the new Trillionaire song
Yeah.
at all. But in, Spanish and Latin cultures, Latinx cultures, just for all of our fans out there, um, I think about it in the way of their grandmothers are definitely listening to some of that stuff along with them and also dancing with them. So it's just like there's just an overall idea and support for the culture. So, I don't necessarily think that those numbers trend anywhere as deeply as any particular just kind of basic domestic American pop record. Um, I just think that those fans remain consistent and always there. There was new songs by Kygo and One Republic this week. I couldn't believe that I actually saw One Republic on New Music Friday, but
Well,
the song is pretty.
Kygo's been crushing it. I mean, that's really I feel like what's driving it. But to be honest, there's one little vocal thing. I don't even remember what it was, but there was definitely like a distinct vocal hook. It was like he just goes falsetto for a second or something like that. That was what really made it the signature sound for me.
Yeah, it's a cool song. Other than just being a straight smash out boom bap pop record.
Yep.
Um, but I definitely dug it. I could definitely hear it. And when I'm going to Quick Check and buying a sandwich whenever that happens again in my lifetime.
Yeah,
But
it's totally grocery store music for sure.
y-
Elevator
yeah, for
music.
sure. For sure. Maybe not elevator music. I could hear it in like Quick Check and 7-Eleven and Wawa and stuff like that,
Wawa.
Wawa. But there was a lot of songs about guys this week, Cooper. Why don't you talk about the good guys and then I'll talk about the bad ones.
So the good guys was Laney, the Laney record. It was pretty cool. I'm not a huge Laney fan, but this one was like it was kind of interesting because it was very like kind of basic, but the way he sang it was really strange. I don't know. It definitely has like a vibe to it.
I
And I enjoyed it. It had like a weird chorus and it had a weird verse too, and it was almost. I thought it was like almost a country feel,
Yeah. I
but
think the song is weird all around, to be honest with you. Again, when I hear Laney's voice, I think of that guy Owl City, who kind of brought about this kind of new idea of pop music, but with a very kind of like, I don't know, singer songwriter vocal. I don't know what they would kind of coin it as, but
see for
sometimes
me.
it comes.
Oh, sorry.
What'd you say?
For me, the Owl City, the main difference is Owl City was big on the falsetto, and Laney like is more like full voice. Like that was Owl
Okay.
City's thing. That and there's another one, Good, Great, Fine, Okay. It's like the newer Owl City. He had a couple of records. Well, I guess Owl City isn't always falsetto, but he had like a higher timbre to his voice.
Yeah, I like to make myself believe that planet
Yeah,
Earth. Yeah,
and
yeah, that was a
The
wild
Disney one,
song.
the Disney one is When Can I See You Again from Wreck It Ralph.
Yeah. Now, the other song, I wouldn't say it's a Bad Guys record, but the 1975 put out a record called Guys, and I liked it. I could tell you why. But Cooper didn't like it so much.
Yeah, that
What
one's
you
all
think?
you, buddy. Not into it.
Well, I'm a sucker for live instruments and plush, recordings. You could tell they really try to put their best foot forward in terms of that.
Hmm.
Um, I do like some of the grooves and the chords, the way the drums were produced for like a live instrumentation song. Does have a really nice modern appeal. Um, yeah. But for the most part, yeah, I was definitely really cool on that. Another song that I really liked on this playlist this week was X by the Jonas Brothers. I thought that was a really cool kind of guitar thing. I like that they're trying to do something a little different. Um, hark on some 60s vibes and stuff like that. And then there was some other song. It was this song called Rock and Roll by a guy named Dijon. I love the sound. Check it out. It's for sure like a new way to kind of listen to the guitar and stuff like that. Um Finally for me was a guy named Vincent McMorrow, song called Headlights. Um Really intrinsic, beautiful song. You see myself waking up listening to that song as I did today. And yeah, I just thought that this one definitely showed me a little bit more promise in terms of how they I think it's worth it for us, Cooper. I was going to mention this is we should review whoever did the playlist. We don't know who does the New Music Friday playlist,
Yeah.
but from last week to this week, I definitely thought there was a little bit more of a cohesion in terms of how these records speak. Last week was just like, oh my god, they just threw it all in, and it was just like a mess,
I mean, I feel
you
like
know.
since it's a new release thing, you can't totally, you know, blame the messenger. You know, they got to work with what they got. But yeah, definitely this week was much better than last week. There's one more new release that I wanted to shout out. It wasn't actually on the U.S. New Music Friday. I'm sure it was on some international ones, but Gasoline by Cash Cash featuring Laura White. I just had to shout this one out because Cash Cash, they're from New Jersey. They played with my good friend Steve Nathan. He used to do music festivals, and so they were playing with that. And then in 2014 or so, they teamed up with Bebe Rexha and had a really big hit, and they've just been cranking out like the festivals and the EDM. And then Laura White is a British singer songwriter who I've recorded a year or two ago, and she is just amazing. She's like literally one
Mm.
of the best vocalists I've ever worked with. Like she came in and it was like one take. It was
Wow.
straight up one take, and it was just amazing that she was prepared.
With that being said, guys, um, Cooper, something happened to Cooper. I think the internet ate Cooper. Um, I'm not sure, but let's check out the Cash Cash song this week. Also, to finalize this a bit, we've decided to make what we call the New Music Modified playlist. New Music Modified is us taking the best of the best from this week to um, you know, give you guys a better glimpse of what's on the New Music Friday playlist. So make sure you guys check that out. We will be sharing the links in all of our descriptions. You can check us out at producingmusicpodcast.com. There goes Cooper again. How you doing?
All right, sorry, back. My battery died.
It's all good. Well,
But yeah,
I
that's
was just
basically it
giving.
anyway. So I mean, we can pretty much wrap it up, and we'll be back next week with more
Yeah, we'll be back.
commentary on the current events of the music industry. New Music Friday. If you have any questions, email them to us. Cooper at producingmusicpodcast.com. God River Audio at gmail.com. You can DM
Yes.
me on Instagram at Coops. Check out our website, producingmusicpodcast.com. Hit Mark on Facebook at God River Audio because he doesn't do Instagram anymore, and I don't do Facebook anymore, so it all evens out.
All evens out, guys.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, you guys have a great week. Remember, have fun mixing because if you're not, you're doing it way wrong.com.
For sure.com. All right, buddy. We will talk later.